Welcome to July 27th through the 31st. We are going to be starting a new unit this week. We're going to be starting to talk about cause and effect in reading. So today what you're going to want to make sure you have is a pen or a pencil and some paper because we're going to be taking some notes today. So if you don't have it already, pause the video and go get your pen and paper. If you already have it, let's get started. All right, so our goals today, we have three things that we're going to try to accomplish. We're going to try to identify and explain the difference between cause and effect. We are going to identify some cause and effect transition words because we know transition words are a part of lots of things that we read. So we want to be making sure that we are identifying them as we are reading. And then we're going to work on identifying cause and effect in everyday situations using something that we would see pretty routinely, which is a video. All right, so let's talk about cause versus effect. So I'm pretty sure that you've heard these words before and you may use them, but we want to be a little bit more specific about what cause and effect are. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is cause. Cause is the event that makes something happen. So what we're saying there is that it is the thing that starts the ball rolling. It makes something else happen. When we talk about it in terms of time, this is the event that happens first in time. And our signal words, some of those transition words that show cause, the word that we use more than most other words, because, that's like the big golden word for cause is because. We've got the word since and for that reason. Those are some good words that show cause as we're dealing with things. Now, effect, on the other hand, is kind of the opposite, but it follows along. Effect is the event that happens as a result of the cause. This event would not happen if you did not have the cause. Because of that, it happens second in time. And like I said just a second ago, it cannot exist without the cause. This is the most important part, is that these two ideas, cause and effect, are tied together. They're always linked up. You cannot have an effect if you do not have a cause. You can have lots of events, but they have to be related to one another. So let's say, for example, that I am walking around and I have an untied shoelace. That is going to function as a cause. So what could happen to me if my shoelace was untied? Well, maybe I fall. What we have is a cause and effect situation. My shoelaces were untied. That's my cause. My effect is that I fell. I mean, I'm not very klutzy, so I'm not really going to fall without any reason to. So that event, me falling, has to happen because my shoelaces are untied. Those events have to go together. When we talk about effect, there are some really big signal words or transition words that show us effect. One of the big words is therefore. This is a word that we see a lot in our reading. The same with consequently. These two signal words are really important for us when we talk about effect. When we see them, I know that what is following has to be an effect. It has to be tied with something else. We also see the words as a result, thus, and accordingly. Now, we don't really use thus very often. It's a little bit of an older word, but we do still see it. So keep that in mind as we go through. So what we're going to talk about next, now that we've kind of covered the basics for cause and effect, we are going to look at separating a sentence into cause and effect. Can we see which event came first and which event follows? So what I'd like for you to do, I would like for you to, on your piece of paper, I want you to go ahead and draw out this chart here. So we're going to make a column for cause and a column for effect. Now I have 5 spaces there and you're going to want some room. So this should take up most of your paper. Go ahead and take a second, pause your video and draw out your chart so it looks a little bit like mine because we're going to be drawing, we're going to be adding some sentences in here to show the difference between cause and effect. All right, so now that you've got your chart all drawn out, let's talk about what we're going to do with it. We are going to be looking at our 5 sentences here. The first thing we're going to do is look at identifying the transition or signal words in each sentence, because we know that transition words are a really good way to look for cause and effect and other things as we read. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to use our chart to separate the sentences into cause and effect. So we're going to do the first one together. And then I'd like for you to try 2 through 5 on your own. So our first sentence reads, orcas are known as killer whales since they surround their prey to attack. So I've already underlined that signal word here, since. That's one of the words that we saw earlier when we are dealing with cause. So what that tells me is that the information that follows should be the cause. And when we think that through, that makes sense. Orcas are known as killer whales. Why are they known as killer whales? Because they surround their prey to attack. So that means when I come back to my chart here, I'm going to write surround their prey as cause because it makes the second thing happen. It makes the effect happen. We would not call them killer whales if they did not surround their prey. So we are going to say that's the cause and that's the effect. So what I'd like for you to do, we're going to go back to the screen here. I would like for you to pause the video here and read through our sentences. Read them through and start pulling apart your cause and effect, and we're going to go ahead and add them to your chart. All right, so now that you've added them to your chart here, the first thing that we're going to do is read the sentences together and identify those transition words. So sentence number 2 reads, because the wind carries dandelion seeds, dandelion weeds spring up in new places. So I see this transition word because. We said, excuse me, there we go. We said that because is one of the biggest words that we can use for cause and effect. So that's going to be my transition word going forward. The wind carries dandelion seeds. Dandelion weeds spring up in new places. Okay, we want to think, how are these two things related? We're going to separate that sentence in just a minute. How about number 3? The first day of winter is the longest day because there are less hours of daylight. Now I know this says winter, but it's supposed to be winter. It's just a spelling mistake. It happens. It happens to the best of us. And once again, I see that word because pop up in there. So in 2 of our examples, we're using that word because. Let's look at our 4th example. Roots grab deep in the soil. As a result, the grass helps protect the slopes from mudslides. This one, I see 2 separate sentences, and at the beginning, there's that phrase, as a result. How about number 5? The valley flooded. Consequently, roads across the valley were damaged. I see this word consequently as my transition word here. So far in our example sentences, we've seen the word since, because, as a result, and consequently to show us cause and effect. So let's look at a chart that I've completed so that we can see what the cause and effect relationship is in these sentences. All right, so here is our completed cause and effect chart. So we already did the first one about whales and being called killer whales because they surround their prey. So let's look at the second sentence. We had this sentence that dealt with because. So when I separated the sentence, I said that the cause is the wind carrying, excuse me, the wind carrying the dandelion seeds. The effect is that the dandelion weeds spring up in new places. Now, why is this the cause and effect? Well, when I think about it, the wind has to happen first. The dandelion seeds aren't going to get up and walk away. So, excuse me, everyone. I have a frog in my throat today. So the wind has to happen first because it has to carry those seeds. The dandelion weeds are not going to grow in new places if the wind doesn't carry them to new places. So that's why I put the wind underneath the cause section. Remember that in time, the wind happens first, the new weeds happen second. Cause first, effect second. All right, how about our third sentence? My cause was less hours of daylight, and my effect was that the first winter is the longest day of the year. So our cause and effect, remember, cause comes first in time, effect comes second in time. So the cause is less hours of daylight. If we did not have less hours of daylight, the first day of winter would not be the longest day of the year. So the longest day of the year happens because there's less hours of daylight. So we're seeing cause and effect. All right, our 4th sentence. My cause was that roots grab deep into the soil, and my effect is that the grass helps protect the slopes from mudslides. We're going to say that the roots happen first. because they grab deep into the soil, they are protecting the slopes from the mudslides. The grass is what's keeping the mudslides from happening, so we're saying the grass has to come first. In the last sentence, the valley flooded is the cause, and the effect is that the roads across from the valley are flooded. If the valley hadn't flooded, the roads wouldn't have flooded. So the first event in time, the last event in time. So I want to look back just a second at our sentences here. Now, I've been talking a lot about the events that come first in time, not the events that come first in the sentence. So this is a very important clarification to make. So I want to look at our first sentence here. Orcas are known as killer whales since they surround their prey to attack. Now, when we separated this, we said that surrounding their prey to attack is a cause. But if we look in the sentence, it's actually the second part of the sentence. When we think about cause and effect relationships, a lot of times we think that the cause has to come first in the sentence and the effect has to come second. That's not necessarily true. Sometimes they can be flip-flopped. So sometimes we'll see the effect first, like in the sentence here. Orcas are known as killer whales is the effect, and it comes first. But the cause, they surround their prey to attack, comes second in the sentence. So in the sentence, it doesn't really matter which comes first. The cause can come first or the effect can come first. But in time, it's very important that the cause comes first. So sentence number 2 actually is the opposite. Because the wind carries dandelion seeds, dandelions weeds spring up in new places. We said that the wind carrying the seeds is the cause in the sentence. So it comes first in the sentence, and the effect comes second. It is the exact opposite of what we were seeing in that first sentence. So remember, it's okay that an effect comes first. It's okay that an effect comes second, but only in the sentence. When we're talking about time, cause must always come first. So in time, cause is always first. So this is something that can be a little bit tricky when we're pulling apart sentences. So keep in mind, big thing to remember, in time, cause comes first. It's the first event to happen. All right, so we're going to go ahead and keep going a little bit because there are a couple of different things that we need to talk about before we get done with our lesson today. So what we need to talk about are the different types of cause and effect. So there are 4 types of cause and effect relationships that we're going to see. Pardon me. Our first example of cause and effect is what we call simple cause and effect. It is where one cause produces one effect. And what it looks like here is that one cause makes one event happen. We're saying that this is simple because it's just one thing, one thing. So if we take a peek here at my example, this is an example I used earlier. My shoelaces were untied, I fell. So we're saying that those 2 events are related to one another, but that's really all that's related to one another. They're just 2 things. And what I've done is I've written my sentences to show that it doesn't matter if your cause comes first or your effect comes first, the sentence still makes sense. So in my first sentence, my cause comes first. Because my shoelaces were untied, I fell. In my second sentence, my effect comes first. I fell because my shoelaces were untied. Now, both of those sentences make sense. I could say either of them. You know exactly what I'm talking about. We still know that the first thing that happened in time is that my shoelaces were untied. So in time, my cause always comes first. But in sentences, remember that they can be flip-flopped. The cause can come first or the effect can come first. So that's our simple. Simple cause and effect is one cause that produces one effect. Now, the second type, so we're going to call this one 2A, because we're going to be talking about multiple effects. 2A, our second, is that one cause creates multiple effects. And what that means when we look at our chart here is that we have one cause and it leads to 3 separate effects. The effects aren't connected to one another in any way. They're just three separate things that happen. So the example that I like to come up with is the idea that, okay, you passed your GED. That's a huge goal for us. So what happens because you pass your GED? What are some things that might happen to you? So the things that I came up with, I passed my GED, so I got a new job. That's one idea. I passed my GED, so I went to college. That's a separate thing. You don't need to have a new job to go to college. Those two things aren't dependent on one another. And the last thing I came up with, I passed my GED, and I'm proud of myself. I can be proud of myself without going to college or without getting a new job. All we're saying is that this one event, this one cause, I passed my GED, leads to these three separate effects. One cause leading to three effects. We know that because of how cause and effect work, that this has to happen first, that cause has to happen first in order for these three things to happen, for these three effects to happen. So that's our second type of cause and effect relationship, where we have one cause that leads to three separate effects. Our third type, which I'm calling 2B, because technically it is similar to 2A, where we have multiple effects. This is where we have one cause that leads to multiple effects. So I think about this as a domino effect. So if you've ever flicked over one domino and it's in a row, we'll see that that row of dominoes just knocks everything over. And that's kind of what I'm illustrating here, is that one cause can lead to an effect. This effect leads to another effect. This effect leads to another effect. So each of those individual effects is creating something else that happened. Now, this is different from what we were looking at back here, where we have one cause that leads to three separate effects. Remember, we said that these effects aren't related to one another. When we talk about domino effects, all of these effects are related to one another. So one example that we see a lot of this, if you're ever on the internet and you look up maybe a Rube Goldberg machine, these are they are very complex machines that are created to create and finish a very simple task. And they look really cool once they get going. So I put a picture of that right here. So what we see is that this boot kicks over the bowling ball. The bowling ball hits the bowling pin. When the bowling pin falls, it pulls this string, which releases the cage and opens the bird. When the bird goes out, it hits the marble, and the marble swings down, and it hits these dominoes. The dominoes fall over and they hit the truck. When it falls in the truck goes on the track. It hits the hammer. When it hits the hammer goes down and the toast pops up. When the toast pops up, it hits the scissors, which closes the scissors. When the scissors close, it cuts the string, which drops this weight. When the weight drops, it pushes the hand up. And when the hand is pushed up, it turns on a light bulb. So we're saying that this one event, this one first event here, where we're kicking over the bowling ball, causes all of these other events to happen until farther on, we have the light bulb that is turned on. One cause that leads to an effect, which leads to another effect and another effect and another effect. So I created another example here that has to do with more real life events and not just a Rube Goldberg machine. So my example is that I woke up early. Because I woke up early, I had time to have a good breakfast. Because I had a good breakfast and I was on time, I took an earlier bus than I normally do. Because I took an earlier bus and I was there early, my boss gave me a new task at work. My new tasks are much more enjoyable. And because they're enjoyable, I'm performing better. And because I'm performing better, I get a raise. So all of these things are dependent on one another. One would not happen without the others that are in existence. So that is our one cause that leads to multiple effects. All right. Our last type of cause and effect relationship is where we have multiple causes that create one effect. So it's almost the opposite of 2A. So we're saying that we have lots of causes that are leading to one effect. Excuse me, got a little excited with the clicker there. 3 causes that are leading to one effect. So my example here are, what are the things that you have to do to pass your GED? It's not just one thing, right? There are lots of things that we can do. One thing, we can make sure we're coming to class, we're watching the videos, we're paying attention. The second thing that we can do is make sure we do the homework. It's really important to finish all the work because when we do the practice, we get better. And the third thing we want to make sure, well, I can't take the real GED until I take the GED ready. All three of these things are separate from one another. You can go to class, but never do any homework. You can take the GED ready, but never go to class. Maybe you do your homework, but never take the GED ready. All three of these things don't depend on one another. But what they do when they're combined together, they create that one effect. You obtain your GED, you achieve your goal. So we have multiple causes that lead to that one effect. All right, so now it's your turn to practice. So what I've got here are the 4 types of cause and effect. 1, 2A, 2B, and 3. So our first one we said was simple cause and effect, where one cause produces one effect, right? My shoes were untied, so I fell. Our second was one cause that leads to multiple separate effects. So we're saying, okay, I obtained my GED. So what are the things I do? I can go to college, I can get a new job, I can be proud of myself. Those were my one cause with multiple effects. Our third was multiple causes that lead to multiple effects, like a domino effect, right? We said, I woke up early for work, I had a good breakfast, I made the bus early. Because I was early, I got a new task, right? We said it, one thing that keeps impacting the others. And the last are how multiple causes create only one effect. So we're saying that I study, I go to class, I take my GED ready. All three of those things have an effect on me. So what I would like for you to do, I would like for you to watch the Disney Pixar movie Piper. It's a little short. So what that means is that it's less than 7 minutes. There are no words. So we have no one to tell us what's happening, but that doesn't mean that we can't figure out what's going on in the film. As you watch, I'd like for you to watch it a couple of times. The first time, I just want you to watch it. Enjoy it. It's cute. I really like it. The second time, I want you to watch it and look for examples of cause and effect relationships. Try to look for an example of each of the type of cause and effect relationships that we've come up with. So I'm not going to show you that video here. What I'd like for you to do is follow the link that will be in the notes section to watch Piper, okay? So you've got a little bit of work to do before you jump into your homework. So your assignment this week comes in 2 parts. The first part was posted on Tuesday, and the second part will be posted on Thursday. So you've got a little bit of practice. If you want me to look over your cause and effect that you wrote out for Piper, go ahead and send me a screenshot and I'll take a look at it. All right, everyone. Good luck, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.